Welcome to this video. EFT and EMDR, a comparison, best methods for working with trauma. My name is Rachel Kent and today I'm delighted to be interviewing Silva Neves, an experienced psychotherapist who specialises in working with trauma and with psychosexual issues. This discussion is largely to compare EFT, or emotional freedom techniques, with EMDR, or eye movement desensitisation reprocessing. These are both approaches successful in working with trauma safely. However, whereas EMDR is widely accepted within the psychotherapy and psychological communities, EFT is not as well known, nor the first choice for clearing traumatic memories.
So can you just say something about how you found EMDR training and using it, and something about EFT by comparison?
Yeah. For me, the major difference between the two is really how it's presented at the moment, I think, because with EMDR, it's presented with, it's very protocol. There's 8-phase protocol. It's very CBT language. It's nice, guidelines recommended.
Yes.
So, and you look at websites and you look at EMDR, the EMDR Association, and people doing EMDR, and it's very clinical and proper in some ways. And then you look at EFT, and it's often images of a bit kind of like religious images with a hand and light and some flowy waters, and no kind of recommended by a body, a psychological body or whatever.
Yes.
And a lot of the websites also are kind of people looking like quite alternative. Like, I would imagine people doing crystals and things like that.
Yes. So it's perception. So what I'm hearing from you is it's your perception of something, never mind whether it works or not, but the way you see it being put out into the world is a bit woo-woo, or
right, the woo-woo bit, exactly. And it feels.
So how would you take that seriously if you're a well-trained professional?
Exactly. And if it was like, I don't know, I've got like generalized anxiety or whatever, I would maybe go to one of those alternative professionals. But if it's to do with like trauma, I would not recommend to go and see one of those, because I want something that's kind of quite robust in terms of training and how they can hold. But of course, then I did I went to a training, eating disorder training. And the tutor was really into EFT, and she was really explaining how she can treat trauma that's underlying eating disorders with EFT, and how quick it is and really efficient. And she is a very well-known kind of BPS psychologist, clinical psychologist.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then I thought, okay, if like a clinical psychologist to that level, raves about EFT, maybe it's more than just being alternative. And that's when I started to become more interested in EFT, to be honest. But then still, I tried to go to some websites about EFT training, and before you did the one in Mind Garden, and it's it's like 3-day training, and again it's like with lots of stars and things, and I'm like, gosh, I'm not really. Yeah. What am I getting into there?
It's interesting that people who've done years and years of psychotherapy training or psychology training quite possibly could be put off and not take it seriously as a really effective professional tool to use with trauma or memory, phobias, etc.
Because even EMDR at the beginning, I thought EMDR is a 7-day training, and I thought, well, that's a bit short, for a trauma thing, but it's so kind of like it's 7 days, but it's like really a robust 7 days. But with EMDR, you think, okay, well, there's so much research done on it, and they've got the nice stamp, and so you think, okay,
also,
maybe.
Am I right though that EMDR training is only for qualified healthcare professionals?
Yeah, and you have to be accredited as well.
accredited as a healthcare professional?
You either have to be BACP accredited or UKCP registered. You can't do it if you don't have one of those. So it's really quite the entry is quite. I think the entry requirement is a bit harsh, to be fair, but that's also what makes it attractive. I think that's amazing, really.
Yeah.
Even with the anxiety protocol, the EMDR anxiety protocol, it works really well, but it's it can be a bit slow, really, and it can be a bit
Can you
protocol.
say something about that? What the anxiety protocol is?
Yeah, it's kind of like so you still do all the kind of like the 8 phases stuff, but when you actually do the processing, you go for the most recent event, then you go for the first event that brought the anxiety, and then you go for the worst one. So
that's interesting, because we have those 3 words in EFT as when you're going to find the memory that links to this issue, you might say first, last, and worst. Yeah.
But there's something with EFT that seems to be shifting, the energy in the body, right? And I think I have a sense. I don't know why, but I have a sense that EFT can work better for anxiety than EMDR. I mean, EMDR works really well, right? I do use it, but I also see that some clients, basically, with a few clients, since I've done the CPD, with a few clients that struggle with the EMDR anxiety protocol, I then do EFT with them, with the, generalized anxiety, and it works better. So for EFT at the moment is my, result after EMDR doesn't work. So I go for EMDR first, and then I go for
EMDR's your first training, or the thing you're comfortable with, and then you find yourself doing EFT. That's really interesting to know.
And I find that really interesting because, there's some things, because I think EFT is quite simple, and it's not. I don't think it's as scary as EMDR in some ways. I don't know why, but people that really struggle with the EMDR, they get on with the EFT really well. That's what I found anyway, in my very small pond of people that I did that with.
What would you say they actually struggle with in EMDR? I know you've mentioned the anxiety protocol, but is it the fact that they are running the memory in their mind?
I think because EMDR is very well known for trauma therapy, I think it sounds like they're almost going for an operation, that kind of like anxiety of, oh my gosh, how deep is that going to go? Where is that going to go? And I think there's a bit of anxiety with that for some people. They kind of try to resist a little bit because of the fear of where it might go. Whereas EFT, that's the strength of EFT in a way that it's more alternative. It feels like it might be easier and less scary in some ways. But also, when I was working in the room with clients, with EMDR, you have to sit quite close to each other. Whereas with EFT, you can still sit in the same chair and show them how you do it, and they can do it, and you don't have to sit so close. So I think that might also be a reason. I don't really know what the reason is, but there's been a study anyway that was done in trauma therapy that says that there isn't one method that works for everybody. So I think it's good to have so many different tools, and
that's a good point.
Definitely with one of my clients who has significant childhood trauma, EMDR was just, we did like 2 sets of eye movement. It was just too much for her. But EFT, she could do the same type of processing without feeling so.
But with EFT, do you just do the short version, or do you do the long version with the 9?
The long version.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't do, because I'm not quite confident with the trauma yet, although she's got significant trauma. I was doing it for emotional regulation for her. So like with positive cognition and so on and so on. And that EMDR couldn't for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Although we didn't do the trauma EFT, it still went where EMDR, or when she did not allow herself to go with EMDR.
Yeah, and then you introduced EFT.
Yeah, that's right. So and that's another strength with EFT is that, once they know how to do it, they can do it themselves. I think, in between sessions, they can do a bit of it themselves. And that gives a sense of autonomy for clients, I think. And that's another thing that makes it maybe less. there is, I mean, EMDR, I just love it, and I really recommend everybody to train in EMDR. But also, EMDR doesn't work for everybody, just like every other psychological methods. Nothing works 100% with everybody. So what I found is that EFT seemed to be when EMDR was too overwhelming for people, EFT seemed to work for those people. But again, I've only done it with, maybe less than 10 clients when I've done both. So it's not really a major population, but that's why EFT was useful for me, is to have it doing the same kind of level of processing I found for clients, but in a way that seemed less overwhelming for them.
Or did you need to look at research? You said yes, you did need to look at research. So I'm just wondering, what did you find that was helped you to take it seriously, as it were? EFT, I mean.
Well, some of it call it energy psychology, and I quite like that word. It felt a little bit more than just somebody doing crystal work or Reiki.
Yeah, emotional freedom sounds a bit like that, and energy psychology, yes, a study of something. Yeah.
I know it's kind of silly when you think about it.
Though. It's
perception. But I did buy some books on EFT as well, and I read a few books, and it felt okay. Yeah, that's there's something behind it. There's basically it's robust enough to fill a book.
Yeah, well, one of the ones that helps bridge the gap to psychologists, etc., is Phil Mullen's book. Did you look at that? Psychoanalytic. What's it called? Put it in the cupboard somewhere. That one's quite a few years old. Phil Mullen, Energy Psychology.
I'm not sure if that's the one. I can't remember the author's name.
About what's going on cognitively a lot. So he's bridging the gap more than talking about energy.
Right.
There's talking about energy that can sound a bit airy-fairy, and then there's talking about cognition and kind of what's happening. But there's also the one I did a video on this before, Peter Stapleton's
I
book.
think that's the one I've got, the science. Yeah, that's what I like as well. There's the word science in it. So,
but this one's quite up to date as well, because it's only just come out last year. Okay. So she's the research lady, the Australian research lady. So yeah, but
there's a lot of things between EMDR and EFT that are similar, actually. So because EMDR works a lot with the body as well, and although we don't call it energy, it's still kind of quite a body process. And so EFT, you can really feel when you do EFT, and when I did it on myself, like you really feel something shifting in the body, and sometimes even like goose pimples go running down the spine, which is a good sign for nervous system releasing something. And you get that with EMDR too, but so there's a lot of similarities really.
Yeah.
And in your training, when you were saying, like, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it's like, you have a forest full of trees, and if you take one down, then the whole thing can collapse. And that's also an EMDR type of thinking. You can address one part of the memory network, and then you can actually process all of the memories that are part of that one memory network.
So in EMDR, so what I call a pattern, or a kind of pattern of behaviour, or a pattern where somebody keeps repeating a certain pattern. So that's the theme, and that's the forest. And then each individual tree is, a specific that holds that pattern in place. And it's something like, cut down 20% of the trees. And I mean, it's not very eco-friendly analogy. Carol Look, one of the EFT masters, talks about the tabletop instead. So you've got the tabletop is the theme, and you write the theme in there, and then she draws lots and lots of legs, like 100 legs on the table, and those are all the aspects. And an aspect could be a memory, an emotion, whatever it is, and it's like 20% of that, and then the table will collapse.
Right.
Going from the global and collapse.
Yeah.
So
there's this familiar, a similar understanding with EMDR. So there's a lot of similarities, and same as we were talking about the anxiety protocol. It seems like it works kind of the same in some ways, but also I think there's a big difference with EFT being something that clients can take home and do at home in between sessions, whereas with EMDR you can't really do that. And the tapping is
And you said you have had clients that you've kind of invited them to do some EFT homework, and it's been successful for them, or it's been helpful.
Yeah, really helpful. Yes, especially for people who have a lot of anxieties or a lot of symptoms out of traumas. That's really something that they could really regulate. Self-regulate a little bit more with EFT. So I think that's really good.
Yes.
And even though EFT has the science behind it, which is that you tap on the meridians, and that's why it works so well. Just that kind of body contact, I think I like that, because it really helps people stay focused.
It's interesting too.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think it's good to keep researching and to keep being creative with it, because with EMDR we had to be creative with the lockdown, because we couldn't do so much eye movement. So, but then actually doing hands like this, rather than, which is also a bilateral stimulation, rather than just moving the eye side to side, actually works really well. So
you do something like that without crossing the energies.
Yeah. Sometimes we can do this, sometimes we can do that. So we can do this or that. But basically what I'm saying is that there's like the standard protocol with EMDR, which is the eye movement. But actually, for quite a lot of people, eye movement. If you do it without the eye movement, it can still work, basically. Although EMDR will still say eye movement is the best way to process.
It's interesting though, because we've got the 9 gamut in EFT. I rarely use it. I literally use the shortcut, and I use the finger points, and that's it. And I just keep going and going until something's changed, resolved, whatever. And invariably, when something's still being an issue, it's simply, there's quite a few aspects to work on. It's not like, oh, that bit didn't work. So I haven't needed to include the long version, but we always teach it in the practitioner, the long version. And then we say, okay, now you can not bother with that bit if you want, you can just do the short version. And then it comes down to people's preference and what works for them,
I like the rolling of the eyes, because that reminds me of EMDR. So I like that.
Yeah. So you like the 9 gamut and keep that in. Yeah. Well, if that doesn't look woo woo, I don't know what does.
Yeah, it looks pretty woo woo, isn't it? Yeah. With EMDR as well, at the beginning when I was doing it, it felt a little bit strange, because suddenly, after being trained in talking therapy for so long and doing talking therapy for so long, suddenly it was just a lot less talking therapy and kind of like asking people to move their eyes. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is this really going to work? So at the beginning, I did start EMDR being skeptical, but I was thinking, okay, it's nice recommended, so surely it's got to work, right? And it's just when I started to do it and when I started to see the really great results that I started to really believe in it, and I started to be more confident with it. And now it's actually transformed my practice, because I use EMDR a lot and it's really, really effective. But then EFT, I started the same way, and then I went on on your training, and I did it I did it with you, and then I did it for myself, and I could see also changes. And then I practice it with my clients, with some of my clients, and it works really well for them too. So I'm now really well, on board with EFT. It's just that I haven't done the full training, but I'm on board with it, and I think it works. I think it will be really great, really great form of therapy too. Because I think with EFT, it's kind of like tapping. So even the effect of tapping is keeping a part of you in the here and now. So even though you might just be going into a trauma, there is such an active here and now thing that's going on, that it can be one of the reasons why it's safe to do trauma therapy with EFT. And if there's an reaction, it might be something that can be quite contained, because there's a kind of like a contact in the here and now. I just don't. It's only just thinking about it, really.
What you're thinking, yeah.
People, they lose all sight of reality. If there's just talking therapy, they can just sit in the chair and lose themselves.
Well, the thing is, I teach people to be quite directive around how someone's choosing to be in relation to the trauma. Because what often happens is somebody starts to just slip into it, and they start seeing it, and I go, whoa, have you gone in there? And they go, yes, I couldn't stop myself. And I say, okay, you've got a choice and control. You don't have to go in there. And I'm telling you, you can clear this without going in there. And when they come back and hear that, and they make a choice, not only is it empowering, because the original experience, they didn't have any choice, any control, they didn't have a time limit, all the things that send someone into fight, flight, fear. It's quite amazing when they're like, okay, all right. And then I say, how far away do you want to send it? And that's not strictly speaking the tearless trauma technique, which is in practitioner, but it's kind of just my spin on it. And then they say 6,000 miles or whatever. And but what's brilliant is testing it, because you just think, well, how do you know anything's happening if it's like that? But it's the testing, and it's like, well, because the body's the barometer. And as soon as, if they go into fight, flight, freeze, it's too close. Send it away. So a lot of the work's kind of like, no, stop, send it away again. You don't need to embody this to clear that.
Yes, and that's what I like about it, the sense that you can clear a trauma without really, reliving it, basically.
Without having to look at it. So I think you did the demo with me on the movie technique.
Yes.
Yes, so the movie technique is one step closer than the tearless trauma technique, because the movie technique, you imagine that you see the scene and the memory, and you imagine it, and then you rate it. And then we take the edge off it on the global whole thing. And then we went in and we did specifics.
Yeah.
And the tearless trauma,
that was really great.
Don't even run it in the mind, because again, you go back into the body, don't want it. And so it's like, no, just guess. So keep it so far away.
If you would like to know more about EFT, please subscribe to my channel and click the notifications bell. Thank you for watching.